Okay, we're recording here. Good morning, everyone. It's a Saturday morning here in suburban North Buffalo, the center of the universe. Our guest today is a very important person who is taking off his black robes as we speak. City Housing Court Judge Patrick Carney. I think being a housing court judge may be one of the most difficult jobs on the bench, and you can be absolutely certain if you're the housing court judge that that is likely the end of your career because everybody complains about you. Anyhow, before we get into the meat of this, Your Honor, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And I assume you didn't spring from the womb wearing a black robe as a judge.
I did not. I actually cannot claim that I have grown up yet, but I was born and raised in Buffalo, moved to Amherst later in grammar school, went to St. Benedict's, went to Canisius High School, went to Canisius College, went to Gonzaga Law School, played some basketball with John Stockton out there, the Hall of Famer, and then
Impressive.
became a city court judge when I was appointed by Mayor Masiello, and have since won 3 consecutive elections, and I'm in my 28th year as a Buffalo City Court judge. Prior to that, I was with the City Court Public Defender's Office for 10 years. So I guess you can call that almost 40 years of public service. And I have been going to work every day at Buffalo City Court in one capacity or another since 1982. And I still love going every day.
Wow. Now, one of our neighbors just up the street, Henry Nowak, who escaped from Buffalo City Court, is now a Supreme Court judge. Are you going to be moving up to Supreme Court?
No.
Why would that be?
Because I'm too old and I'm too tired, and I absolutely love what I do. I'm an acting county court judge because housing court now is a hub court, and I am in charge of all of the evictions in Erie County, as well as all of the housing court duties, which include any issue, whether it's county health issues or it's Buffalo structural building issues within the city of Buffalo. And that includes residential, commercial, or any other nature.
Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about the rules here. You are under constraints. Of course, as usual, I'm boundless. You can't come on here and you can't endorse Brian Higgins for Congress.
No,
Is that
I
correct?
cannot.
Okay. So you can't really talk about politics, but you certainly can talk about things that have to do with improving the courts, educating the public as to the functions of your court and your job. And what other things generally are the boundaries that you have as a judge in terms of speaking in public?
Mostly, we can do any public speaking that educates the public as to the law or courts or legal issues in general. We cannot give legal advice, and we cannot do any political endorsements of any kind. And the one word that I try to stress to people is that courts are reactionary. They are not proactive. A sitting judge in a criminal part, for example, cannot go out and make arrests. He has his defendants brought to him by one law enforcement agency or another. I am the exact same way with properties. The city of Buffalo or the county of Erie writes violations and they bring them to housing court for a legal determination. And if you're cited individually, it is a quasi-criminal legal determination of your guilt or innocence. So we have a lot of issues in housing court that people believe that I can just go out and issue orders however I want to do it. But somebody has to ask me for those orders. They have to bring those requests to me, and then I can rule on whether they're proper or not. I always like to say, I have a gavel. I don't have a magic wand. So we treat this as a treatment court. We have domestic violence court. We have DWI court. We have drug court. We have veterans courts. These are all treatment courts for people. I view myself as a treatment court for properties. I only have one goal, and it's not necessarily to punish, but to improve that property in some way, shape, or form. And we get a lot of disagreements on how properties should be improved.
Okay, I think I witnessed one example the other day. I don't know what the council members' representatives, I don't know, they call them community activists or
Yes.
advocates, whatever.
A number of another of the councilmen send their chief of staff or a staff member. My court is specifically set up to have district days. So Tuesday morning, we do Ellicott and Maston. Tuesday afternoon, we do North and Niagara. Friday mornings, we do Delaware and University. Wednesdays, we do Fillmore and South. So it's easy for the council representative to be in the courtroom, and they have specific issues. They know the neighbor concerns, they know the block club concerns, and they bring those to me. And they're also very helpful in fashioning solutions to the individual issues. And each house has an individual story to tell. The 89-year-old widow is way different from the multimillionaire developer, even though they may own similar homes.
Okay, well, there was, as an example, one of these councilmanic representatives was saying to you, I think it was saying, well, the city has to do more about estates.
It was the Maston district.
And as I recall, your response was?
You are the city.
And I agreed with you most wholeheartedly. I also pointed out that the Common Council is the supreme body of the city, and if that councilman can get together with fellow councilmen, they can run the city if they wish. And it won't be easy for them to do that, but they are the group that tells everybody else what to do.
Well, it's even within a singular entity, which would be, say, the city of Buffalo. There is a multitude of different organizations, and sometimes their goals are at odds. For example, every year the city of Buffalo auctions off delinquent tax properties, and they have a public auction. And at times, the inspections department, which has already asked me for a demolition and has been granted a demolition order on a property, will try to get the Treasury Department not to sell that property at auction, because then we have to start all over again. The Treasury's, I guess, rule of thumb is to bring in the most money possible at that auction. So sometimes, even within the city, different departments have different goals, and they're at odds with each other. And I find that the communication between the council, the mayor, the different divisions, the treasury, the inspections, particularly the legal department, simply need to have better communication among themselves as to what they want happening. The city is the prosecutor, so they determine if this is going to be a trial, or it's going to be time to repair, or it's going to be a demolition request, or how that prosecution is to proceed. Much like Mr. Flynn in the criminal, district attorney's office, he has discretion as to how to proceed with any particular defendant, whether it's a plea bargain or it's a trial. The defense doesn't have anything to say about that choice. They can refuse the plea bargain and go to trial, but it's Mr. Flynn's office that makes that initial proposal. So it's the city of Buffalo's law department that prosecutes the building code violations from the city of Buffalo.
Okay, well, just to switch gears a little bit, I want to get into the concept, which I think many people may not be aware of yet, but real property values are just absolutely skyrocketing in the city of Buffalo.
Yes.
It's absurd what is happening.
Too
You know,
much, too fast.
I hope my new neighbors don't mind this, but we paid $46,000 for the house you're in now, and I thought I overpaid at the time. Of course, that was 45 years ago. But there was a case before you the other day, and sometimes I really think housing court should be on TV because some of these things are amazing. There was one woman before you who apparently bought two houses for $30,000, recently sold them for $180,000, rented them for 6 years and generated revenues with the rent. And apparently from day one, she had violations with respect to rats and sewage and other things, which apparently, as far as I could see, she never really remedied. I mean, she said she did, but the inspectors didn't agree. Anyhow, you fined her $500, and she was arguing with you over that. I
Right.
mean, this lady made $150,000
Right.
in 6 years of renting out a sewage and rat-infested pair of houses.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
this is just, it's mind-boggling what property is worth now, and people have no idea what it's worth.
And that was an offer from the city because the actual noticing in that case may or may not have been defective. So if the notice is defective, then I have to dismiss the case. The city can rewrite it.
Start over.
But the properties were already sold, so the city was just seeking some sort of a nominal fine, which is fine with me, so that they can recoup some of their process fees. I mean, it costs the city almost $1,000 to bring every case before me when you consider the inspector's time, the court time, when you factor in how much it costs the city to serve each one of these cases on the defendant. And yeah, people are never happy. They're never, I mean, an experienced real estate developer would have been ecstatic about that. But, you know, we do them one case at a time. She sold it to a prominent, you know, investor who will probably do all the work. And if not, we'll be right back where we started. Because I can't take a whip and force people to go fix their houses. I can order them to, and if they don't, I can fine them or even jail them, which then costs another, you know, $2,000 a day to pay for them to be in jail. And I've put people in jail in housing court, but that's an extreme case because my focus is fixing the properties. She was not going to fix the properties. She knew that. I knew that. So we suggested a sale, and she took that route.
So she's gone, and now hopefully we have a solution.
Hopefully we have a solution.
You know, I was just saying to myself at the time, you know, I do a lot of pro bono work because I'm stupid and I really don't need the money. But I think she made more money on this rat and sewage infested pair of houses in the last 6 years than I did practicing law.
Right.
So, I mean, anytime anybody
happens.
wants to make a deal.
And you know what? The offshoot of that issue is that people see that she actually hit it. She bought it just at the right time. She sold it just at the right time. And they, with the internet, with international communications, I have property owners in Israel, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Germany, Utah, California, New York City, Queens, and they see property prices in Buffalo and they think that it's a steal. Everything's a steal. But they don't see the insides of these properties. They're on a website. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a retired government worker from England, a very pleasant woman, who, as part of a investment portfolio, they bought a house in Buffalo for $30,000. And I went to the website and viewed it. And it was a magnificent east side piece of property with a beautiful frontage. And she paid $30,000 for it. Well, what the picture didn't show was that the back of the house had burned down years before that. So the property was in desperate need of a demolition. They sold it internationally. And of course, nobody does their due diligence anymore. And she ended up paying for the demolition through the city of Buffalo when we did a judgment and eventually tore it down, and she lost her life savings.
So she bought a
through
movie
this investment
set.
firm.
She bought a movie set.
She bought a movie set.
She bought the front.
Right. But when I have, and I have two different types of court. If you own a property as an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, which is how most people own them, I can only punish the corporation. The city would have to jump through enormous legal hoops to pierce a corporate veil and make the actual owner liable. If you put your own name on it, then it is a quasi-criminal case. So really, homeowners are more exposed than property developers.
Could you expound on the corporate veil?
Yeah, if you purchase anything, I'll give you a perfect example. Peter Reese LLC owns 49 Starin. 49 Starin gets written up in housing court, and Peter Reese LLC has other assets. So Peter Reese LLC then sells the property to Mrs. Reese LLC, who now becomes the owner, and the only thing she owns is 49 Starin. Now, that's an easy example. We could pierce the corporate veil. That's obviously a sham transaction. So, yes, Peter Reese, the original owner, would still be liable. But when you have developers, for example, Ellicott Development or Termini Development or Greenleaf Development, all of those corporations own numerous sub-corporations to protect the main body. So they are buying properties. They buy 324 Main Street and create 324 Main Street LLC. It only costs a couple $100 to create a limited liability corporation, and they thereby shield all of their other assets.
No, let me just ask you a question. If this house is in the name of Peter A. Reese LLC, and I sell all my right title and interest to that, to Joe Bortz, who lives in Abu Dhabi,
Right.
I mean, does anybody know that Joe Bortz now owns it? I mean, my name's on it, but so what? I don't have any interest at all in it.
The way the court works is whoever is the legal deeded owner of a piece of property is the person or entity that is liable in housing court. Whatever your contracts are with outside individuals, say you have a rent to own contract, has no bearing on you being the proper defendant in housing court. If your name is on a deed, you are the proper defendant in housing court.
Let's say the name on the deed is Peter Reese LLC.
That's who owns it.
Okay. And Peter Reese, the person, me, sells all my right title and interest to that LLC to Joe in Abu Dhabi.
Until you have a new deed, it has no legal bearing in housing court.
Okay. So
you can
it's gone to
sell
that.
your rights, but you can't sell your responsibilities.
All right, now what happens if there's a violation after I transmit or I transfer? You know, I've deeded it to the LLC, then there's a violation. Is the violation on me or on the LLC?
It's on the deeded owner.
Then it's the LLC then.
The only thing that's important is who's on that deed.
And just so you know, as an attorney, an LLC is kind of a book on the shelf. It's a fictional person that I created. And under recent Supreme Court rulings, it may have more rights than you and me. It certainly has free speech now.
A ridiculous Supreme Court ruling.
Which is absurd.
Yes.
But it lives forever. It can't die. Well, the Secretary of State can kill it under the right circumstances, but they tend to live forever. I've got some upstairs that never got activated, never did anything, never got off the ground. I got a couple, and yet they will live forever in the hearts and minds of men.
Many years back, a few years for you and me being old guys, it seemed to be in vogue to put your children's names on your house deed so that you would avoid the estate taxes. And therefore, the house would simply pass without any outside taxes to the children or to the child. Well, what's happening now is I have a 90-year-old homeowner, and the children are also on the deed. So the children can be cited, and of course the children are going to have much greater assets than the mom. Or the mom passes, the house then passes automatically to the children. The mom let the house go to the point where it needs to be demolished, and the kids are on the hook for the demo payments. You try to do something nice, and what you create is liability.
You know what I'm actually seeing on the other side of that? The kids pretty much figure the house is a write-off anyhow, so we
Right.
don't care. And our name's not on it, so we're just going to let it go. And then they get a letter saying, oh, by the way,
Your name's on the deed.
well, their name isn't even on the
Yeah.
deed, okay? It's just on a mom's estate,
Right.
something like that. They say, oh, by the way, it's worth $35,000. You know,
Yeah.
even though you abandoned it and the roof
Yeah.
was falling off when mom finally
We-
passed away. And if you want to come to court, you know, and show that you're the proper owners of it and do the estate work, you can have 35 grand. And I'm seeing more and more of those, and that's it gets back to the absurd appreciation in real property values in Buffalo.
A great focus years ago, created by ne'er-do-well attorneys in the foreclosure industry, one major office out of New York City in particular, and it woke up Mickey Kearns and other activists where the term zombie properties came. And we had a lot of them for 2 or 3 years. And then they just sort of went away because the industry caught up. So now we still have a few zombie properties here and there, but now we have a glut of what I call ghost properties. The owner died sometimes years ago, and valuable Buffalo properties are just sitting there with no owner. If there's no estate created by the children, there's
in limbo.
no owner.
It's in limbo.
Right. And the only people that can remedy that is the city by requesting title through abandonment.
And just to
But they don't
explain,
have that procedure in place.
just to explain that, once you die, everyone essentially has an estate, but you have nothing recognized by the courts or the government unless someone actually goes and files
Right.
an estate proceeding
Right.
and says,
Again, reactionary.
I'll be the representative for this estate. I will gather the assets, pay the debts, etc., and wrap things up. But if nobody stands up and does that, you're right. This is a ghost, and it's in limbo forever.
And these properties, the neighborhoods have known about them for years. And the city is very diligent about going to those properties, writing them, and making the defendant the estate of John Smith or Jane Doe, and bringing them to housing court. And the most that we can do is demolish them if they need to be demolished. I can issue judgments against the estate, but I can't. We research, we try to find the heirs. We actually have Western New York Law Center now doing free legal work on estates to establish an estate and to bring the property to at least a point where we can sell it to somebody that's going to do something good with it. I find it personally very inconsiderate when people die when they're in housing court. Well, I take almost personal offense to that.
Well, yeah, but
it
some
happens.
people are rude.
Yeah, it just happens. They die.
But you know what? But, from the
It
movie,
doesn't help the block clubs.
from the movie Old School, I think it was Blue died mud wrestling two young co-eds, and everybody was down in the dumps over it. But one of the persons, the stars, I think it may have been Will Ferrell, said, "Look at old Blue died. That's what old people do. They die. So what are you going to do?"
And it happens, and I'd love to be more help to the neighborhoods, but I don't have any tools for that. The person is dead.
All right, now let's talk about
can't
Western.
bring 'em back.
Let's talk about Western New York Law Center, and who was that nice lady? She actually approached us after I was there with Larry Gottesman.
One of the attorneys from I don't recall specifically who was there that day.
I think it was Samantha was her first name.
But that is a new development where Western New York Law Center came to me and asked if they could have a seat at the table, if they could be there on one specific day every single week to help with these ghost properties. and they've been a tremendous help. They do outstanding work. They're there every Thursday morning, which is the only day that I have a representative from the city law department, which is on Thursday mornings. So that's kind of a busy day for us, where we do all of our trials, and all of our major problem cases are generally on a Thursday. And the Western New York Law Center has probably helped us out. They've only been there for, they started, and then of course the pandemic stopped everything, and now they're back again. So they've probably only been working with us for about a year, but they've resolved, I would say, between 5 and 10 estates for us, and actually got the properties into somebody's hands. There's a function by which we can involve the land bank if they want to become involved, but they would have to work through the city law department, through the Western New York Law Center, through, if the city would start to take these properties as abandoned properties, and then work with the land bank and the Western New York Law Center to get them into different hands. It's a collaboration that can start in housing court, but I can't initiate the solutions. I can only rule on the motions for the solutions.
When you mention land bank, I go, "Gah," because they caused a big problem for us with one property. It was, you probably remember the address. It's Main Woodbridge, 2866. I'll
Sure.
bet I was in your court 24 times over that.
At least.
And we finally, the building was demolished because there was almost no other way to go with it.
Right.
And it got sold to a developer, and now they're causing big trouble for us.
That was a case where I granted the demolition motions. We actually had squatters living in that house who then claimed ownership. We had a Supreme Court action.
Did the people who claimed ownership bring toilets with them, by the way? Because my recollection was that,
No,
that they
did not.
used the building as a toilet.
You know, there is still squatters laws where you can actually squat on a property for years and years and become the owner.
How long do I have to have it?
I don't know. The law goes back to like 1800 and something.
Yeah,
It's never been repealed.
Under adverse possession, I think it was 20 years under the old English common law.
And that case took years because it was a foreclosure. There was a bank involved. There was a previous owner on the foreclosure. There was an Article 78 proceeding objecting to my demolition order, which is what your neighborhood desperately wanted. And yeah, it took years, but we finally got it done. And as you said, it ended up through the foreclosure action being distributed to the land bank, which then sold it to a developer.
Who wants to put an apartment building where we think there should be 2 single-family houses, and we'll be warring over that till the day I
I've got
die,
nothing
and
to do
100
with
years
it.
more. I know, but
Nothing to do
you know,
with it.
and in fact, perhaps I think that ought to be a further session that we talk about that, because there are unintended consequences. And in truth, our neighborhood was not in favor of demolition until it got so bad that there was just no other alternative. I mean, you have squatters living in a house that had become a neighborhood hellhole. People actually moved out of Central Park because of that property. All right, one of the people who was in early sold her house and moved out because she just got sick and tired of it.
Yeah. I've had developments over in the Elmwood Village area where you have some very, very expensive properties, and I had an issue with a house that was half built, 3/4 built, whatever it was, and a realtor got hurt there, and the neighbors were up in arms about doing anything. It takes the city approximately 4 to 6 months after they decide to write a case to get it to me, just to get through the process of legal notice, doing their research, et cetera, to actually get it in front of me. So the inspector may go to the property, issue a warning to the owner, give the owner a few months to try to resolve it. When it becomes unresolved, the inspector will go back, notice it's unresolved, go back to his department heads and say, okay, we're going to write this house, write the case up, then it goes to their secretary, then it goes to their chief inspector, then it goes to the law department where it has to be signed, then it goes back to the process servers, and it's at least 6 months. And, you know, as you recall, the building on Ellicott Street years ago that just collapsed, and everybody was pointing their fingers at me, and it was finally Lou Petrucci who came out and said, Judge Carney had no knowledge of this. We did not get the case into him yet. So I had no knowledge of this building falling down, and I'm going on social media and I'm looking at Channel 4, and there's all kinds of people yelling at Housing Court and Judge Carney, and I didn't even know the building existed.
Your Honor, Lou Petrucci's a good guy, but I can tell you the only reason he took the weight on that one is he knew he was going to retire fairly soon.
Lou would have taken the weight anyway. Lou was a great asset to the city of Buffalo for many years, and you'll never get me to say otherwise.
Always a nice guy, always a gentleman, never a problem. Now, just as an administrative note, we've gone over a half hour here, okay? We're at 31 minutes. And I don't want to cut any of this, so I think maybe we just keep going for a little bit more.
Sure.
But what your choice on that. But
Sure.
What we're planning on doing is putting this up on our regular Western New York Field of Dreams distribution point off of Facebook. But also this should be on the Buffalo Public Access Channel TV station. And the way I edit is I don't like to edit. I might change the beginning, I might change the end, I might slice it up into pieces. But we also probably would like to see if there's enough interest in this that we can do a call in or at least a type in via Facebook while we're doing a live presentation. So when this goes up, wherever it goes up, if you've got questions, I'm Peter A. Reese. You can get me on Facebook. And you can make notes and put comments on Western New York Field of Dreams on Facebook. So why don't we just keep going a little bit? But many of these things are they're big topics. It's a half-hour program as far as I'm concerned on individual properties, and there's one of them that I was in court on the other day with you that I bet we could do a half hour with that one.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, that's a perfect example of the issues that we face. There's a property, without giving the address, in a very prominent area of the city of Buffalo.
Yeah, like my neighborhood.
Like Peter Reese's
We're going to fess up to that. That's why I was there. I'm concerned.
Let's
it's
talk
right
about
on the
rich people problems.
It's
right?
on the edge.
That's what everybody wants to hear.
First world problems here.
So this piece of property has been for years owned by an investor from California. This investor from California listed a P.O. box as their legal address, which is also illegal.
It's in a shopping mall, just so you know.
And he is in the wind because of various judgments, and we can't find him. And the property is in his name. It's not even in an LLC. It's actually in his name. It's been abandoned for years now. So there are a couple of lien holders, I would imagine mortgage holders or lien holders, attached to the property. So as the property sits right now with this gentleman's name, I can issue a warrant for his arrest. I can fine him. Even if I issue a warrant for his arrest, there's no extradition for housing court charges. So if they arrest him in California, I can't get him anyway. So I can never get him to Buffalo. I need somebody to reach out to the lien holders and bring them into this so that their investments don't. Now, I can't do that.
Now, who can then?
The prosecution can seek out other interested people and at least notify them of this particular issue. Because if the city's going to take it, and they can take it as an abandoned property, there are legal processes by which any property that is legally abandoned, which I believe, I'm not absolutely positive, involves no activity for 1 year, no vacancy for a year, no repairs for a year, court cases being written and unanswered, can determine the abandonment of a property, then bring a motion to, or get in contact with one of the lien holders to bring a motion for them to foreclose or for the city to actually take the property. Now, the city may be taking a property that has more liens on it than it's worth. But at least the more people we bring to a table, the more solutions we can come up with. But in this particular case, right now, as it sits with this beautiful piece of property, I have no solutions. And if I close the case, if I issue a warrant for his arrest or I issue fines, my case is closed.
So
I can find him guilty and punish him, but nobody's been able to find this person for at least a year now.
So you could convict him in absentia almost, all right?
I can convict him in absentia, and then that doesn't help the house.
Nothing's
It doesn't
happened.
help the neighborhood.
Now, a little background on this. This is a turn-of-the-century house, few doors in from Main Street, over by Bennett High School. Nice single. Got a twin house next to it. Yeah. There's a mirror image twin house next to it that I think is now a multiple. It's on a strange boundary between our homeowners association and the next development to the north. I think half the house is in our homeowners development and therefore subject to the deed restrictions that we have. Totally strange. Your Honor, the other day you basically said the homeowners association is authorized to go look at the outside of the premises.
I authorized access without any trespass responsibility to the city of Buffalo or the homeowners association to go in and clean the property, mow the property, try to keep it as good as they could. I authorized the city to go into the interior of the property and see what condition that might or might not be in. But I like to hang on to these massive problems, which would my life would be the simplest if all I did was sit there, run a trial, find you guilty, find you not guilty, and sentence you. I would not have any problems. I would just be out playing golf all day, every day.
And some of these cases they'd go away. They wouldn't be in your court for 20 years.
They would be gone, and the city would have to start all over again.
Well,
so if people are interested in individuals or corporations being punished more than they are interested in a solution to the property, fine. I'm just not geared that way. I want to find solutions.
Well, I believe there's some recent legislation that may require or may make it possible to make the lien holders more responsible than they've had to be in the past. And we were speaking with a nice lady, the attorney from Western New York Law Center, and she's going to be looking into that, and we'll probably be talking further with you about that.
If they actually foreclose on the property, then they do become responsible and the city can cite them.
And we're looking at something now. We believe that we can essentially hold them liable even if they haven't foreclosed. We can force them to foreclose, sort of thing.
Bring them in.
So we want to talk, with you more about that. We obviously need to do more research, but it looks very hopeful. I mean, between the zombie property law and that, it looks like we may be able to move some of these ghost houses.
Do you know that if everybody listening today goes and looks at their deed, there is no date of birth on any deeds in the state of New York? And I have, just in the last 2 years, had 3 cases where sons have sold their father's property and done all the legal paperwork and showed all their ID.
Sure.
And went in and one recently, the son sold the property for $105,000 and put the $105,000 in his bank account
And took off.
and lives in a different state. And the proper owner had to go and undo the sale and who's going to get the $105,000 back? It's gone. But it's actually the purchaser that didn't do the due diligence.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so it's the purchaser that's responsible.
Well, we don't like to talk ex parte, but since we don't know who the parte is,
Right.
I can just say that, I went there and I didn't realize, all I was able to do in the past was look at the front, stop, stand on the
Right.
sidewalk, and I flew my drone over it, okay, and found
Yeah.
some problems with the roof. But looking at it more closely, there were shrubs from Home Depot there, still in the pots. They cost $29.95 each, and I could use a few out front.
Yeah.
Okay, there's lawn furniture there that's much nicer than what I have. There's a nice looking grill. There's all sorts of nice things there. And talk about abandoned. It's planned. There's a lawnmower. I think I could start up and mow the lawn.
It's mind-boggling.
And the idea that people walk away from something like this, and just let it sit.
I think sometimes it's people are running away from it because they have so many other issues.
All right, now
and we
here's-
have a guest.
Here's a problem when you have as many cats as we do in the house. This is Prince. And Ellen, you may need to remove Prince from here, but right now he's
Prince
showing
certainly likes me.
he likes everyone. So don't get too into that. But he does like you. Right now he's showing his butt to our viewers. But we when you have as many cats as we do, this is a risk. Anyhow,
That you might want to edit. The cat butt you might want to edit.
well, I'm not sure. You see, that adds a touch of reality. It's one of the reasons I do not like editing. I think the people watching at home know that stuff like this happens. If the camera falls over, you say, oh, well, that's reality. We're not trying to sell you any baloney here. This is really, pretty straightforward stuff. But I need those shrubs. In fact, Ellen and I later today may go to Lowe's to buy some shrubs to replace some stuff that didn't make the last winter. And I'm sitting here saying, boy, these are pretty nice.
Yeah.
So-
We get all sorts of unique issues. And it just, before we close, I would also like to add that people think that slumlords are what drives property problems. If I had to guesstimate, I would say that slumlords are maybe 25% of what we do in housing court. At least 25% is just elderly. There is not a single funding source, not federal, not county, not state, not city, that is geared towards senior citizens. I have hundreds of cases with elderly widows or widowers, people that have been in these homes for 30, 40, 50, even 60 years that simply cannot afford to paint them or to put a roof on them. And they wait for years in line with all of the other funding sources. So, for example, lead paint funding is specifically geared towards properties that have children in them because children are the most susceptible to lead paint poisoning. So if you are a millionaire developer and you own properties that need lead paint removal, you will qualify for that program if your tenants have children. You will go to the front of the line and you will get your house painted. And I've had millionaire developers come in and say, well, I've been approved by the program and they're going to come out and paint the house. And I'm like, really? I'm waiting for you to have the county paint your house. And then I get an 85-year-old widow who doesn't have any children in the house, and she's charged with peeling paint, siding repairs.
Why doesn't she adopt children then?
I tell them to rent children. I tell some older
if there was a service, that would be very valuable.
Go rent some children to move in with you and we'll get your house painted. Now, I understand the program is geared towards the most vulnerable, which is the children. But it doesn't have to be a lead paint program. It can just be a paint program for senior citizens or some sort of help for these people so that they're not waiting years and years, and the neighborhoods aren't waiting years and years for these properties to get fixed.
Well, the question I have then, I know this is a sad story. You've got an 85-year-old widow who's been living in a house for
Right.
40 years. Her husband's been gone. She just can't afford to do it. But why don't you just throw her out in the street or throw her in prison then? Why don't you do that, Your Honor?
Just doesn't seem right to me. Not even to a cold-hearted person like myself. It doesn't seem right to me. I actually get into a lot of issues, and sometimes it takes many months or even years, where the true solution is to have the senior citizen move out of the property because it's no longer safe for them and it's no longer economically viable. I actually had years ago a HUD project put $97,000 into a 90-year-old woman's home, and the property was assessed at $40,000. So it can become a waste the other way. But as you know, they don't want to leave that house, even though they have no plumbing, they have no hot water, or they have no heat. And yes, at times I have forced elderly people out of their homes because it was unsafe for them to be there. But nobody wants to leave their house. Now, again, me being who I am, I don't have a single emotional attachment to anything that doesn't breathe. I don't have an emotional attachment to a car, a house, a property, a piece of jewelry, nothing. All of my emotions are tied up with things that are breathing or used to be breathing. But convincing people of that is very difficult sometimes. And we have great legal services for the elderly. We have great legal services for poor people, but they can't print money. And essentially, the root of all evil and the solution for all evil is money. We're always talking about money, whether it's preservation or it's senior citizens or it's millionaire developers, whoever it is, we are always, always talking about money. That's what drives the evils and the solutions of this world.
So people don't come into your court and say, I can easily afford it, I'm a multimillionaire, and I'm just not doing it, damn it.
Those are the people that spend time in jail.
Okay, but I haven't seen many of them.
There's a few.
Okay, well,
There's a few. But people like that generally see the economics of it. So somebody of the description that you just brought to me will either fix the property or sell it. They won't face the punishment. They're going to come up with the best economic solution that they can. We have had multiple foreign entities that have come in and bought 10, 15, 20 houses at the auction and put them all in LLCs and fix half of them and throw the other half away. And I can issue judgments till I'm blue in the face against all those limited liability corporations, but it still doesn't solve anything.
all right, well, let's get back to the 85-year-old widow for a second now. Now, why doesn't she just write a reverse mortgage? Because suddenly, she can stay in her house and piles them. I see this on TV all the time. Just a sudden flood of cash will come to her.
If she can get a reverse mortgage, and a lot of elderly people, rightfully so, look at that as selling their children's legacies or their children's inheritance. So what eventually does happen
More cat butts in the video here.
is the property worth anything? A lot of times these properties can't even get a reverse mortgage because they're not worth anything. And once the person dies, it also takes years for these banks to catch up with the reverse mortgage. I had a woman in this Parkside neighborhood on, I think it was it not Wallace, one of the cross streets. This was a 94-year-old woman who was in a nursing home and lived between a state appellate court judge and a lawyer. And she had been in the nursing home for quite some time, and she had no family. And she had a reverse mortgage. And this judge and this lawyer would come to me all the time and say, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And my only answer was, when you mow your lawn, and you get to the driveway, keep mowing.
Keep going.
Keep going. Because once she finally passed away and the bank took it, then we had to rewrite a case for the bank. And yeah, it took years to do something with this reverse mortgage house owned by a senior citizen in a nursing home.
Well,
it gets crazy.
You'll have
the
to-
property was probably worth $500,000.
well, you'll have to pardon my skepticism, but I and some other attorneys, including a couple of prominent bankruptcy trustees, believe that reverse mortgages are very much like someone coming and extracting the gold from your teeth. And in many cases, the terms are terrible. They're just awful.
Yeah.
They're stealing the property from you. So how about as an alternative, if we had I'm a capitalist as long as it works, okay?
Right.
I don't think the government should run Paul Parrot shoes. But when it doesn't work, how about a government program whereby people could receive some sort of, payments?
And instead of private industry, you have a government reverse mortgage program. It depends on what side of the aisle you're on. Yeah, that can be looked at as a government overreach that's interfering with private industry because these banks are making tremendous profits on reverse mortgages. If they weren't making profits, they wouldn't be doing it. And can any government run it as good as the banks are running it? Mm-hmm. You have a lot of good ideas, but once any government gets a hold of those ideas and starts putting their stamp on them, suddenly they're not profitable, and I don't understand that.
And it also takes 6 months to get it into court when it ought to be there,
Right.
in a week or two.
All the processes take time. A reverse mortgage, if you're a particularly selfish individual and you don't care what you leave, reverse mortgages are great ideas because once you're dead, you're dead. You don't care what happens to that piece of property once you die.
You're correct.
But if you care about your legacy and leaving it to somebody, then a reverse mortgage is a very bad idea.
I agree with you. Most deaths are definitely permanent, and the last time one got undone, they started a whole religion over it.
Right.
So, all right. So,
What I would like to have people do is, if you have seen this podcast and you're interested in it, I will guarantee to come back in June or in July, whenever you can arrange it. Send your questions, whether they're particularized properties or they're general questions about housing court or they're criticisms about housing court. Send them to Peter A. Reese, either on Facebook or through the podcast. We will get those questions and we will create another show based solely around your questions.
and I'll also put my
And
email.
if you want to, you can do I don't think you have a phone set up.
I can. We could do a call in.
If you want to do a call-in, I just did one on WGR with Mr. Cortez on his radio show. I've done it with Penny Wolfgang's radio show on call-ins, and those shows were an hour, and they were way too short because people have a lot of questions about housing court. They have a lot of questions about their properties. If you have problem properties in the city of Buffalo, your number one resource is to call 311 to document that problem, to get your neighbors to call 311. The building inspectors answer 19,000 311 complaints a year. So every 311 complaint that goes to the city of Buffalo by the mayor's orders is investigated. And if you do it on a website, which you can do it on the City of Buffalo website anonymously, you will get a response. You will get a case number, and you will eventually get a response to that. If it's really horrendous, contact your councilman's office. Find out who your councilman is, because a lot of you folks out there, you don't even know who your councilman is. These are tremendous assets, so that the council office, who has liaisons to me, can investigate it. It's not a swift process, but it's the only one we have right now. So if you have issues, call 311. Myself and the ex-commissioner Durenda And the current commissioner is thinking about expanding the community police officers program, which we created to solve neighborhood issues. I've evicted over 2,000 drug dealers since we started this program under the Body House. So neighbor issues, noise issues, party issues, drug dealing issues, parking 10 cars in your backyard issues. You can contact your community police officers and they will investigate these either through the 311 line or directly to your district. We've created a lot of programs to create solutions, and the community police officers don't go to the general judicial population. They don't wait in line. I have opened my court to them. They come directly to me, and I probably get 20 requests for evictions based on Body House properties a week. We do 20 a week.
Where are those body houses? Where are they when I need them?
Where are they? They are everywhere.
Could you publish a list of those, please?
Oh, we have had some speakeasies. We have had some student housing issues where the creativity is off the charts.
Yep.
Full sound systems, full bars in basements of student housing where they're rocking parties every weekend, and we deal with those. We have a special process to deal with those, and I can move them.
That's something we probably ought to talk about a little bit more, too,
Yeah.
because I'm hearing them called, I think you're being called pop-up unlicensed nightclubs.
Yep, got those. That's a new thing.
They're
Yep.
appearing everywhere. They don't
Yep.
have a liquor license.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's, anything goes
Right.
with full music,
The
etc.
back of bar. We did one.
And then it disappears.
Right. We did one on Main Street, right between Winspear and LaSalle, where there was a barber shop and there was a building attached to the back of the barber shop. And they had a separate entrance, and they were running a speakeasy. And the way that we found out is that the police find out through social media. We just closed down a strip club with a full pole.
Could you
and
contact me?
tables.
Let
We
me
just
in on that
closed
before
down
you close
a
it down,
makeshift
please.
strip club that they advertised on social media.
I am such a square. Nobody ever notifies me of this stuff. Look, we are close to an hour now, so I think we're going to close this down.
Sure.
Your
Happy
Honor,
to come back and answer everybody's questions, but be forewarned, I will tell you the truth.
sad. Listen,
Some of the truth is sad.
this has actually been a lot of fun. I'm not going to cut anything on this, but we're going to need an hour from public access, so I'll have to talk to the boss over there.
Okay.
But he said he wanted quality, and quite frankly, this is a quality broadcast production here. We've covered a lot of ground. There's a lot more we could get into, but anyhow, thank you very much for
My
coming
pleasure.
to our
And I
humble
will
abode.
promise to come back if you get enough questions.
All right, well, no two ways about it. I think they're going to come, and
I'm
let's
not
see what
answering the
happens.
cat's questions. That's
Well, anything about this cat's behind. Listen, we're going to sign off now on Western New York Field of Dreams and the Public Access Channel. It's a beautiful day, and I think you should go out and take a walk or ride or anything you want to do. The sun is out. Maybe spring finally got here in Buffalo.
we're doing our traditional family derby party.
Cool.
Beautiful fundraiser that we go to every year.
I've been invited to go to a protest against the Derby and the cruelty of horse racing. So I'm halfway tempted. I don't know much about it, but
Well, my wife loves the outfits and the hats, so we're going to the derby party.
and mint juleps for all.
Mint juleps.
So we're going to give a new term to sober as a judge. Thank you again, Your Honor. Really appreciate
My
you
pleasure.
coming. And we can stop anywhere we want because cutting the end is easy. I think that's going to come.